Puget Sound is one of the most remarkable bodies of water in the world. It's the largest bay on the west coast of the United States. From its entrance off the Strait of Juan de Fuca to its southern tip near Olympia is about 100 miles. It has hundreds of miles of shoreline. If you were to walk around its shoreline, following every bend and curve, including walking around every island, you would walk close to 1,300 miles. That's equal to the distance from Seattle to Mexico. The Sound is an estuary, a semi-enclosed body of salt water with fresh water flowing into it. If you went around Puget Sound and counted up every river, every stream, even every little creek, you would find more than 10,000 rivers and streams flow into it. The watershed for the Sound, the drainage area flowing into it, covers 16,521 square miles, almost all the area between the crest of the Cascades and the crest of the Olympics. 3.5 million people call the Puget Sound watershed home. More than half the residents of Washington live within a half mile of water. Puget Sound is home to a huge diversity of marine life. The largest octopus in the world call Puget Sound home. The world's largest chitin live here. The largest, the fastest, and probably the greatest diversity of sea stars in the world are found here in Puget Sound. It is one of the richest biological areas in the world. To understand why there's so much life here, we will first look at how Puget Sound was formed and how that formation helped support this tremendous abundance and diversity of sea life. Puget Sound is deep. Much of the main basin is over 600 feet deep, which is the height of the Space Needle. The deepest point in Puget Sound is 930 feet deep, 1.5 times the height of the Space Needle. How Puget Sound was formed and how it became so deep is related to why there's so much life here in Puget Sound. Geologically, Puget Sound is a youngster. If you were here just 15,000 years ago, the area between the Cascades and the Olympics wasn't filled with salt water. It was a collection of river valleys and lowland lakes. During the Ice Age, there was a lot more snow in the winter and a lot less snow melted in the summers. The polar ice caps grew, till the northern ice cap extended from the North Pole southward to halfway across North America. Around here, the glaciers extended as far south as Olympia. It's estimated that in the Seattle area, the continental glaciers, ancient polar ice cap, was about a mile thick. This massive sheet of ice filled the valley between the Olympics and the Cascades. Only the peaks of the mountains poked through. Glaciers don't just sit in one place. They flow like a slow-motion river. Some glaciers have been measured as moving as fast as 6 feet per day. As they move, they pick up sand, rocks, boulders, whatever in their way. They plow along like a giant bulldozer, gouging out a deep hole. Here in the Pacific Northwest, the continental glaciers form two forks. One gouged a path from north to south between the Olympics and the Cascades, forming what is now Puget Sound. Another fork headed west, carving out the Strait of Juan de Fuca. After a few thousand years of glaciers grinding away, the climate changed and the Ice Age ended. The climate warmed up. The The ice melted and the glaciers receded. As the glaciers melted, salt water from the Pacific flooded in, forming Puget Sound and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Remember all those rocks, sand, and boulders that were dragged along by the glaciers? As the glaciers receded, these rocks and boulders were left behind as huge piles of glacial till, forming many of the islands and hills around Puget Sound today. There were also several hills that were left underwater. These shallow areas where glacial till was deposited are known as sills. There are three major sills in Puget Sound today. One is located near the entrance to Puget Sound in the area known as Admiralty Inlet. The second major sill is just west of Tacoma at the Tacoma Narrows. The third major sill is near the mouth of Hood Canal. The depth of water over these sills is often about 200 feet deep, way over our heads, but much shallower than the water on either side of the sills, which is in the 5 to 600 foot range. These sills have a lot to do with why there's so much life in Puget Sound today. To understand why some underwater piles of rocks are so important to life in Puget Sound, we need to examine how food is made in an ecosystem and what happens to it.